The Greek philosopher Aristotle said, "They should rule who are able to rule best." Sri Lanka finds itself at the cusp of an important election, the election where we will decide who we want to be the leader of Sri Lanka for the next 5 years, a decisive 5 years, given the several crises that we have faced during the past few years. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation, and as always, we've got with us an expert panel to discuss and to provide you with the information that you need to make an informed decision at the presidential election that will be coming in just a very few short days. Starting off with our guests this evening, first we've got Kusum Vijayathilaka representing the Samagi Janabala Vegya. Very good evening, Kusum, and welcome to the show. Also, we've got with us Bharath Arul Swami from the CWC. Thank you very much, Bharath, for taking time off your busy schedule during this election campaigning season and joining us on our program this evening. We've also got with us Dr. Kumara Gurupuram. He is representing the DPC. Thank you very much, Doctor, for taking time off your busy schedule and joining us on our program this evening. We're also expecting the presence of Nabisha De Silva representing the August Collective. He will be joining us momentarily. But to start off this evening's program with Kusum Vijayathilaka representing the Samagi Janabala Vegya. Kusum, we're just a few days from the presidential election. Sajith Premadasa is contesting from the Samagi Janabala Vegya, obviously break away from the United National Party. You get Ranil Wickremesinghe contesting from the United National Party. There were, talks of some form of a coalition between the two. There is this statement that's making its rounds on social media saying, both of these candidates are leaders of the United National Party, and therefore if you are voting for, say for example, Sajith Premadasa as your first preference, do not forget to cast your second preference for Ranil Wickremesinghe, and if you are voting for Ranil Wickremesinghe, do not forget to cast your second preference to Sajith Premadasa. So there seems to be some sort of a suggestion that at the 11th hour there is going to be some turnaround, some coalition, something unexpected. While you're free to make your opening statement as you would please, I'd like to, I'm pretty sure the viewers also might like to know if there is any credence to these, at the very least, rumors that are making its way through Sri Lanka. Your time starts now.
Thank you everyone for having me, and good evening to the audience at home. I think to answer the question, if I can start by addressing the reasons why the SJB exists in the first place, right? The SJB broke away from the UNP, not simply because in the media it's been talked about how Mr. Premadasa had personal ambitions and it was a personality clash that led to the breakaway. In fact, what happened was the UNP's trajectory over the period of Mr. Wickremesinghe's leadership of the party has seen pretty much a constant downward trend. He's seen a degradation of the values of the UNP. He's basically been unable to carry the UNP to a majority in a single election on its own. He's constantly putting forward other candidates, common candidates, because he's unable to win the victory on his own. And he was unwilling to not only step down from the prime ministership, but even to relinquish the leadership of the UNP despite his widespread popularity on the backs of the Easter attacks, the 2018 local government elections, the bond scam, etc. So in such a context, I think it's only been 7 or 8 years. I think it's strange that we still have to answer questions about why does the SJB exist, should we get together. The fact of the matter is, if there are voters at home that are so worried and concerned about the NPP, by all means, if you are giving a second preference, I would urge you to give that to the SJB. If for some reason you believe that Mr. Wickremesinghe, despite his long history of failure in the political arena, failure to administer, failure to govern, failure to lead, if you still think that this is the best man for the job, by all means exercise your right and vote for him. But give the second preference to Mr. Premadasa if you're really concerned about the Leninist Marxist Party. But I have to, and I hope that throughout the course of this program I can maybe change a few minds and maybe give a few reasons as to why Mr. Wickremesinghe is definitely not, should not be the number one choice in the upcoming election.
So, what if their first preference is Sajith Premadasa? Would you be all right with them voting or casting the second
Really
preference
not
for
up to
Ranil
me to be
Wickremesinghe?
all right or not all right. I can personally say that I will not be voting a second preference. I will be giving a single vote, but it's up to each person to decide on their own. It's my understanding, and the way I think about it is that I just don't think that the country is going in a good direction right now, and I see who's in charge. I read the NPP manifesto, and I've listened to a lot of their speeches, interviews, and I've read the documents. I haven't been convinced, not even close. And I myself have criticisms of the SJB and of SJB policy, and even the manifesto. I think there are a few things that could be done differently. But overall, I think it's light and day between the other parties and our manifesto and our plans. I don't think there's even a comparison, if I'm really being honest. And I don't know if that seems a little bit arrogant, but to be honest, the depth and the detail and the vision that the SJB has, I just don't see any of other parties in any serious contention.
Just one final thing. Independent presidential candidate Ranil Wickremesinghe, while speaking on his political stage, of course, during a rally, questioned as to what really is the manifesto of the SJB. He said there is one manifesto that is being put forward by a group headed by Iran, Kabir, and that group of the SJB, and that there was another manifesto that was put forward by the group that came externally, including Professor G.L. Pires and the breakaway faction of the SLPP. Is there any truth to this? Do you have multiple manifestos?
I mean, that's just a media narrative. I think if you check the SJB's website, there is, I think, an 80-page document, which is the overall manifesto. And because we are in the midst of economic crisis, there is a blueprint which expands upon the economic data in the main manifesto.
Okay.
It's like a blueprint 3.0, which is a follow-up to blueprint 2.0. And that has the input of the entire economic committee and Mr. Sajid Premadasa. I think you're referring to the alliance members
Yes.
of the Samagajana Sandhanaya,
Yes.
Mr. G.L. Pires, Mr. Nalagodheva. Their inputs are very minimal in the process of the manifesto. The manifesto is based on the SJB's original ideology. And just for our audience's sake, the SJB ideology is very different to the UNT's ideology. We're both liberal parties. We both practice, we believe in capitalism, we believe in the forces of the market. But I think the manifesto of the SJB is very clear, and the economic blueprint is very clear that we are going for a social market economy, a model that has the principles of social democracy as well as market economics. So.
Thank you very much, Kusum Vijaytilake. Will expand on those during the course of today's program. Moving our attention to Bharat Arul Swami from the CWC. Now, Bharat, your party has decided to support independent presidential candidate Ranil Wickremesinghe, and your party is one of the very few minor parties across Sri Lanka that is united in their stand to support a single candidate. So, Bharat, now you've been campaigning for Ranil Wickremesinghe and, well, expanding on his plan for Sri Lanka. Now, I pose the question to Kusum because he is a direct member of the SJB, but of course you are not a member of the United National Party. So, on the topic of, between Sajid Premadasa and Ranil Wickremesinghe, if Ranil Wickremesinghe's campaign is all right with their voters casting a second preference for Sajid Premadasa, because the election is so tightly contested this time around that many political analysts are of the opinion that no candidate is going to get 50%, and this will go into a second count. And in the event it does go into a second count, the second preference is of much importance. In your opening statement, I'd like if you could touch on that a bit as well. Your time starts now.
Thank you very much for having me here today for the Face the Nation program. Actually, we started our campaign through the program Face the Nation initially, and we are in the last stages of our campaign. And I think this program is very important and vital to spread across our message as well. So as we all seen in past couple of months, President Ranil Wickremesinghe is contesting as an independent candidate. So that, many parties, we are not party oriented, but many parties are supporting President despite their ideologies, their policies and whatsoever. But on that context, you can see a drastic change in the pattern of liking towards the president's policy and his working pattern from north to south has increased comparing to last few weeks. So this has given a positive message to all our supporters, not only in locally but also in international attention has come to Sri Lanka, saying that this is the only president candidate who has potential to deliver something can be very tangible and which can be very practical where a layman can understand. And also going through his policies and his manifesto, like as my friend highlighted, parties may have a lot of policies and manifestos and many things. It's all depend on how and what we are going to deliver. So President Ranil Wickremesinghe on that context has clearly pointed out how he has delivered for past 2 years and what is his plan for next 5 years. Because we are in a vital situation where we have to cover our debt from 2028. So for that we have to have a proper economic plan so that we have to earn that economic stability. So and also President is harping on the Theravada economy, where it's export oriented economy, which is very practical solution for our country at this moment. And also we have strict policies and frameworks which can govern the country without going into a chaos in next few years. And in commenting on our community per se, Ceylon Workers Congress, representing more than 1.6 million of people, especially Indian origin Tamil community living in Sri Lanka, and we being the strongest party, unlike others, not like dividing up and down, we had taken a very clear stand with consultation of our people that to support President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Like unlike others, there are some other individuals or parties, they took a double stand where some they supported one candidate, the other supported another candidate. So why we are very strong in that is that we are in consultation with our members and our people. People gave the mandate. Yes, this is the candidate who had delivered some confidence to the people, and in the crucial time, I'm not talking about the past 20 years. Whenever there is a dispute arises in this country, Ranil Wickremesinghe has been a smart person who had come and put everything in order. So on that confidence, we are very confident, and also we are very much we are hoping the best from him, not only as a community but also as a citizen of this the country. And also when we comparing with others on the context of our community, our biggest demand or our request for the political candidate is to integrate our upcountry community into the national mainstream. But when it goes to the others, especially NPP or SJB or anyone, they are still looking us as a upcountry community as a separate group. We wanted us to be included in a national mainstream. So but when I went through the national their manifestos, I still see we are classified into a separate group. So that is our cultural identity. Like upcountry Tamils, our cultural identity. We are not compromising on that. But our national identity is Sri Lankans. We want whatever the rights and welfare and benefits which other citizens are enjoying, it should be come to us also. That is our demand.
Just because we don't have a representative from the National People's Power today, unfortunately, presidential candidate of the NPP, Anrukumara Dissanayake, speaking in Palavakele about 2 days ago, said that, we call estate workers as Indian origin Tamils. He said, it's been 200 years since you have come to Sri Lanka. Your children were born here. You were born here. Your parents were born here. Your grandparents were born here. What is this? Why are you still called Indian origin Tamil? We're all Sri Lankans. So in that context, at least, it seems as if, although you say that they are looking at you as Indian origin Tamils and as a separate community in Sri Lanka and not integrated into the national framework, what they say on stage, and even when I went through their manifesto, there is, I mean, there is talk about your rights, because your community, I think it's undisputed that your community has been deprived of their rights and therefore needs special recognitions like children or women, so on and so forth. But I specifically did not see any segregation as such. So if you could clarify on that. Are you telling that you had discussions with the SJB as well, I believe? They turned down your idea of
No. The thing
including...
is, since you mentioned NPP's manifesto, NPP's manifesto, there's a separate chapter as Malayaga Tamil. That's right.
You're right.
So what we are looking at, it is not about the title. Are we like Malayaga Tamil or upcountry Tamil or Indian origin Tamil? It's not that. We all have our cultural identity. Someone has, he may say Northern Tamil, Eastern Tamil, Muslim, Sinhalese, everything. But we are looking at the rights and benefits, a constitutional right and benefit which average citizen of this country is enjoying should come to us as well, especially the land rights, our recognition, our access to education, our access to health. So these are in dispute for many years. So now, according to President Ranil Wickremesinghe's manifesto, he is ensuring a village concept for us. So a village concept is just not building houses. It is about giving a recognition for the community who are living in that line rooms, which the others being pointing fingers like for this many years we are living in line rooms. We didn't have the legal context for that solution. So now he had put forward and he has been delivering that to our people. So these are the important areas we are touching on, and also touching on upon the economy. And we do see now, I don't see a kind of a positive reaction on this ongoing IMF negotiations where others will come and, I don't see another way out in the recent discussion with the IMF representatives or statements from, like in my layman context, I sense there is no way of renegotiating the terms and conditions with the IMF at the moment, and also if that is the case, it will further delay our development era, or otherwise the stage of development. So that and also we need to satisfy the bilateral debtor creditors who are
the assurances that we've given.
Yeah, there are a lot of technicalities behind that. So on this context, first, on the stable economy, second, the integration of community and communal harmony among the communities, and also in the development stages. I think Ranil Wickremesinghe is the best choice for everyone, more than this preferential votes. Most of the people of this country had decided overwhelmingly that to support Ranil Wickremesinghe.
So you're saying your community will cast a single vote, or you're advising your community to cast a single vote in favor of Ranil Wickremesinghe?
See, casting vote is their right. What we are doing is canvassing them to
Canvassing
cast.
them. So you're canvassing them to cast a single vote.
Exactly.
No second.
That is up, he or she can decide, but our view is cast single vote.
Your view is to cast a single vote. Just one final question before I move to Dr. Kumaraguruparam. Bharat, now you said that this time President Ranil Wickremesinghe is contesting as an independent presidential candidate. He's got political parties from across the board, some even part of political parties or politicians from political parties that are supporting other candidates. So let's take a little bit of a look at coalition governments formed where President Ranil Wickremesinghe was a part of. 2001 with Chandrika Kumaratunga, then some of the more memorable governments that were formed with Ranil Wickremesinghe in them, and then 2015 when he himself put forward Maithripala Sirisena as a common candidate. Those governments didn't really last long and it ended in chaos. And given that we're in such tumultuous times, do you see this time around that trend that has been there for the past 30 to 40 years changing now? And if you believe that it will change now, why is that?
See, comparing those examples, the 2022 crisis is the worst. So if we can, come out of that crisis itself and put
No, but the government didn't last.
No.
That's what I'm saying. How can he work with so many political parties if he, if the track record is not good?
The thing is, there is a common understanding between many people, or the allegation which was made. Look at the team, not more than the individual. So it was like in political stages it was portrayed. But I would say a leader should have the courage and the ability to work with anyone. Now, when you take Ranil Wickremesinghe as a one individual in the parliament, and he became the president, and he worked with the real-time enemies of him, who worked against with him for many decades, right? So if he can put everything in order and run the country, bringing the entire country out of this economic crisis, I don't see a doubt where he will have a problematic situation in future parliament. So I think the people should realize in the next parliamentary election, they should choose their representative very wisely. We are going into a uncharted terrain at the moment. Where this so much of, as you said, so much of uncertainty is going to be happen, and so much of international involvements are going to happen, and also one such representative should also serve his constituency, but also serve its country also. So that kind of candidate should, that kind of representative should be given candidature by the party, and also people should be, select them to the parliament. So if that is the case, I think President, without any fuss, he can run the country.
Thank you very much, Bharataru Swamin, representing the CWC. We now move our attention to Dr. Kumaraguruparam from the DPC. Doctor, your party is supporting which candidate at this election?
Party is obviously they are supporting Sajith Premadas.
But you beg to differ.
No, it's like this. From the inception, when presidential election was about to come, so I was looking at it in a different way. When the country was economically in a very bad shape, it's only Ranil Wickremesinghe as an individual, as an independent person who came forward because he has international trust, eminency and talent to overcome the issue. That I am not saying the economics is totally, actually still we are dependent. Still there are a lot of credits to be settled. The whole world depended on him. Personally, they were able to depend on only Ranil Wickremesinghe. Therefore, he needs some time. He has started, he is embarked on that. Therefore, he needs some time to finish off his target. So that is the reason I was beyond politics, in looking at the country's angle, country's development. I personally advocated that he should be the person. But when you are coming to the elections, everybody has their democratic right to contest, everybody has the democratic right to vote, and Sajith Wickremesinghe, as far as Sajith Premadasan is concerned, he has given some certain assurance to our party's deputation. So that is about the future. So based on certain assurances given, as far as our aspirations are concerned, so then the party has decided to support him.
So, but what I really can't understand is, the basis of party politics is much like the concept of collective responsibility in cabinet. So now if you are telling me that your party has decided to support presidential candidate Sajith Premadasan, and you, independent of that party decision, disregarding that party decision, has decided to support independent presidential candidate Ranil Wickremesinghe. My question to you is, where is that sense of collective responsibility? What's the point in even calling yourself a member of that party?
I'm maintaining the collective responsibility, there's no doubt.
You're maintaining that collective responsibility?
Of course, because as far as I'm concerned, before these candidatures came up, the country was facing an economical crisis. So he is the only person who came. So at that time, from inception, when I analyzed, before these candidates came up, he is the only person.
No, I understand your point of view,
Yeah,
and
but right
I understand the reasons why you have
Right now,
you have decided to support independent presidential candidate, and that's your prerogative. But my question to you is, Sri Lanka is Sri Lanka's political system is based on party politics. So if you are saying that you are still a member of the DPC, and of course, I'm pretty sure you had discussions at the DPC on which political candidate to support. And I believe, or I think it's only reasonable to presume that you made your views heard at these meetings. And after taking into consideration your views and the party's discussions with these various political candidates, the party decided to support presidential candidate Sajid Premadasa.
I am not at all against the party.
You're not against that decision?
Not against the party's decision. Because this is democracy, and when the party's majority is thinking that we have to, because based on the assurances, we personally, our party deputation has discussed with the leader of SJB and the candidate Sajid Premadasa, and we are satisfied with the future developments.
Now,
Particularly,
would it be
even for example, if you take the 13th Amendment,
okay?
When we are analyzing, it is not taking a side. I analyze on a neutral path. So if you look at the 13th Amendment, what Sajid has predicted to the what he will do in future for the Jaffna people in his speeches in Jaffna, are more the people can trust on that or believe on that, right? So,
so people can trust the assurances given by Sajid Premadasa?
Yeah, he has given very solid assurances.
Okay.
So therefore,
you trust in them as well?
No, as far as a politician,
okay,
I never depend on these election manifestos. Election manifestos, we have to wait and see what will happen after the elections.
Okay.
Right? That is my view. Right? My experience is that the manifesto, every party come out with manifesto. Right? So if you take your NPP leader,
so you're saying that although Ranil Wickremesinghe has put out a manifesto, it's really not in you're not too concerned about delivering on that manifesto, because that is
any politician, any candidate, that is
it's just the document.
That is my so far I have experienced that, not only now for several years.
So are you asking the general public to disregard these manifestos? Don't waste your time reading this.
Even in TV interviews, I have told, I don't trust on these manifestos. But to some extent, we have to depend on that, because that is people, right?
So we
as a
have
politician,
to depend on it,
it seems like you're breathing hot and cold here.
It seems like you're hedging your bets, Doctor.
Big one.
It seems like you're hedging your bets. Depending on who wins, you'll go.
Exactly. That was my contention. Are you? My question to you, Doctor, is are you?
It takes a lot of time for you all to realize those things.
Are you the DPC's insurance policy, just in case Sajid Premadasa comes into power?
Big one. Big one.
In case Sajid Premadasa loses and Ranil Wickremesinghe comes into power, are you DPC's insurance policy? meaning if the candidate that the DPC is supporting, who is Sajid Premadasa, does not become president and Ranil Wickremesinghe becomes president, then that opens the avenues by means of you supporting Ranil Wickremesinghe for the DPC to then come and say, hey, one member of our party supported you, so we'd like to support you too. Are you the insurance policy?
Those are all very cheap politics.
So that's not so. Okay.
So I think that thank you very much, Doctor, for those very candid views. We can we'll dissect those views and get into the nitty-gritties of it in the second round, where questions from our journalist will be posed. On my left, we've got Nadeem Majid, and on my right, we've got Niresh Eliathambi. But before we get into the second round, we'll cross over to a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Face the Nation.
The voice of the nation determines its future through every choice, with every vote.
Newsfirst. bringing you the latest updates first and fast with the truth at its core and real-time data.
Catch every detail with expert analysis, answer to your questions and the unexpected uncovered.
Stay ahead of the curve with the latest technology, one update at a time throughout the day.
Feel the pulse of the election.
On your screens, stay connected and informed.
With Newsfirst.
Sri Lanka decides.
Sri Lanka decides.
Welcome back. You're watching Face the Nation. We're in the second round of today's program, and the floor is now open for questions from our journalists. On my left, we've got Niresh Ali. On my right, we've got Niresh Ali Thambi, and on my left, we've got Nadeem Majid. Let's start the round with Nadeem, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Shalan. Kusum, I want to ask this because based on the responses to Shalan's questions that both Bharat and Dr. Kumaragurupan were giving, I want to put a scenario to you because in 2015 and in 2019, the votes of the minority communities, particularly in the north and the east and also in the hill country, were instrumental in bringing Maithripala Sirisena to power, and in 2019, Sajith Premadasa carried a lot of those votes as well. The equation seems to have changed a little bit now because those parties that are backing you, the parties are backing you, like ITAC, SLMC, ACMC, the Upcountry People's Front, etc. But within those parties, there are deep divisions, which will compromise their capacity to canvass for your candidate. Have you all factored this in, and is it going to be a serious issue for the SJB candidate, Mr. Sajith Premadasa?
I think Mr. Sajith Premadasa can count on significant support from Sri Lanka's minorities. I don't want to, I'm not an expert on what you referred to as the Indian Tamil community and the Northern Eastern community. I think the SJB is a fairly inclusive party. Some might say too inclusive, right? Generally speaking, we are a moderate party, so we are for the 13th Amendment. We were for the rupees 1,700 salary increment. We are for development of the eastern and northern provinces. And we're for the self-determination of the Tamil people. So I think overall, as a moderate party, I do expect Mr. Premadasa to receive quite a bit of support from the minority parties. If your question is that, has he lost some of that support? It's difficult to say. I see polling on both sides. I think it's clear Mr. Wickremesinghe has always had some traditional support in the north and the east, especially. It's deteriorated at the 2020 election. Has it come back in some way? That's really the question, right? No one really
but when
say.
The specific question is about the strength of your alliance partners, right?
Yeah,
the ITAC, SLMC, ACMC arguably were in a much stronger position pre-crisis than they are right now.
All the
their
political
capacity to organize, right?
All the political parties,
for sure.
Yeah, I think
but how big a factor will this be?
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to say, Nadeem, to be honest. Polling data itself, as you know, is very difficult to pass through, right? Some of the polling surveys that you receive, they're not representative of the entire island. Some of them, when they are representative, are very small samples. I think the IHP is one that I've been following. And recently, we saw 2 months ago, Mr. Wickremesinghe had a small surge. Then last month, it sees Mr. Premadasa has had a small surge. So I'm not going to comment too much on that. If I can come back to something my colleague Mr. Bharat said, talked about the last 2 years, right? So, shall we talk about briefly what Mr. Wickremesinghe has done in the last 2 years? So, one of the most clear and obvious outcomes of an IMF program and of economic collapse and a bankruptcy such as ours is that you see poverty spiking. Is that you see the number of the poorest people slip into extreme poverty. Middle class collapses, okay? So this is not my opinion. This is 50 years of IMF programs has shown this. This is why the IMF themselves have changed their own discourse. Sri Lanka and a few cases before, even Pakistan, even Bangladesh, they mentioned social safety nets. They mentioned increased spending on social assistance. They mentioned cash transfers. They have now kind of moved away from an explicit model of austerity. Having done all this, Mr. Wickremesinghe came in 2.5 years ago, completely failed to prioritize the poorest people in the country. did not even meet the IMF's own very low target on social assistance spending, right? Poverty has more than doubled. The UNDP suggests that Sri Lanka is one of the most unequal countries in the region. We have the top 1% of income earners owning something like 30% of total wealth. And we have the bottom 50% of income earners owning less than 4% of wealth. And now we're worried about political radicalization. One of the most obvious impacts of sharp increases in poverty is political radicalization to violent extremism.
So, Kusum, to bring it back to that, right, to the election itself, because those factors that you mentioned, rising inequality, the increase in poverty, aren't those the very factors, economic factors, that are driving people towards, or that is driving the surge in support for the NPP?
I think if you look at support for the NPP, if you look at any country where the IMF or there has been a debt restructuring or a collapse of the economy, the leftmost formation or political formation in that country generally becomes more popular. And that's been the case from Latin America to Asia to Africa, wherever.
Is it the left or the centre left?
It's the left. It's generally the
far left.
It's generally the furthest left that gains the most popularity. So in France, for instance, the furthest left were virtually nowhere. But in the last 10 years, they've grown. In France also, even the right has grown. Right? So both the extremes tend to become more popular because they are seen as the alternatives to the mainstream.
So not only the left?
Not only, but predominantly. So Podemos in Spain, in Chile, Venezuela, left parties have done pretty well, especially in the last 10 years. Most of this started happening after the 2008 financial crisis. Bernie Sanders in the United States.
Yes.
Even the Labour Party went a bit left with Corbyn, if you remember, right?
Back to Sri Lanka, though, has
So the
the
NPP
SJB and, let's say, the SJB with its social market economy proposition that you all are putting to the people, have you all failed to go left enough?
That's a good question. So that is part of my critique of the SJB. Right? My critique of the SJB is that they have sort of not gone populist enough, in my opinion. But I have to accept that this is a liberal party, and part of the liberal base is also within Colombo. And there's a lot of business interests. There's a lot of people that are concerned about the corporate sector, about economic growth and enterprise, free enterprise, entrepreneurship, that kind of thing. So you can understand how a liberal party might have trouble balancing these two messages. And the other problem in our politics is that there are divergent populations, right? The people in Colombo, in central Colombo, have very different wants and needs to people outside of the Western province.
But then, Kusum, if the SJB's concern is that the business community, the corporate leaders, as you say, in Colombo and in central Colombo, so on and so forth, are worried about the party going too left, we see a surge in support of the business community in Colombo, corporate leaders, when it comes to the NPP, who is, well, definitely more left than the SJB.
I think some of the corporate leaders might be hedging their bets, right? End of the day, I think the corporate sector, the private sector and the public sector have a partnership in a way. They have to work together. That's how economic growth usually works, right? It's an amalgamation of the public sector, creating the conditions for the private sector to succeed. So I think a lot of corporate leaders, just in case you never know, hedge your bets, be seen at some of these events, be seen in the front row, accept the copy of the manifesto. That's no problem.
So you're saying they're not really supporting them, but
I would
save face.
May I say something else? I would not pay too much attention to what the corporate sector thinks overall, because the corporate sector was supportive of the Gotabaya tax cuts. I mean, we saw the business chambers, multinational corporate conglomerates in Sri Lanka publishing newspaper advertisements congratulating Gotabaya Rajapaksa for the tax cuts. So I wouldn't necessarily take that.
You said something very interesting. You said that the party has probably not spoken to people as much as you would have liked. You said that there was your critique, that they hadn't gone populist enough, that they're not speaking to people. And even for, let's say, a lot of people in the middle classes, you have MPs in your party who are very popular with professionals, middle class, working people. And they are the ones who have been, let's say, the primary contributors to not just the manifesto, but also the Blueprint 3.0. Now, for those whose votes you're trying to canvass, a question that they have is, look, these guys are the ones, they're the architects of the policies, but they are not the ones who are on the ballot paper. The person on the ballot paper is Sajith Premadasa. So what has Sajith Premadasa done to deserve my vote? Because it's not like having Harsha De Silva or Ranil Wickramaratne or any one of the others on it, right? So if you're saying vote for the team, then is the team really front and center?
Sorry, if I misspoke, I didn't say vote for the team. In fact, I voted for the SJB before I became a member of the SJB, much before that, right? I'm a UNP voter traditionally. I voted for the UNP 90% of the time. I voted for Ranil Wickremesinghe in my district 90% of the time. The only time I haven't voted for him was in the last election. In fact, Mr. Premadasa is the only politician from the liberal wing in Sri Lanka's entire political history that emphasizes the poor and poverty almost exclusively, right? And what I started speaking before about divergent communities in our country, Dr. Harshi De Silva and the economic team, they are very conversant in speaking to the business community, and they have the trust and the faith of the business community, and they also attract some part of the center-right in Sri Lanka. But I'm going to tell you, at least 80 to 70 to 80% of Sri Lanka is rural. Maybe that ratio changes a bit, but the majority of people in Sri Lanka are middle class, lower middle class, poor, peasantry, farmers. Okay, that is Mr. Sajith Premadasa's base, and nobody can say otherwise. Okay, he beat Mahinda Rajapaksa in 2001 and 2000, back to back, despite not being a southerner, despite not being from that province. Okay, the last person to beat Mahinda Rajapaksa in Hambantota is Sajith Premadasa. When he came into politics, he could have taken his father's electorate in Colombo. Instead, he went to Hambantota and fought the good fight there for more than 10 years. And I think this is the strength that people know. I think the Rajapaksas understand that even with all this devastation to their political brand, the only political brand in Sri Lanka that can compete with the Rajapaksas over the long term is the Premadasa brand. And I think they've taken every chance they can to try to weaken the Premadasa political establishment, and it hasn't worked. Right. So,
Bharat, if I can come to you on that subject of you have Kusum saying that after Rajapaksas, the Premadasa is the strongest brand. We know that the CWC, prior to backing Mr. Wickremesinghe now, was backing, to quote Kusum, the most powerful political brand in the country, which was the Rajapaksas, right?
And I think Mr. Kondavelan was also a member of the government.
Yeah. Do you all feel that maybe that there is potentially a miscalculation that has been made in backing Mr. Wickremesinghe now? Or are you confident in your support?
Thing is, we are not members of Rajapakshas. We are alliance of Rajapakshas. I wanted my friend to...
But your party supported Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
So your party members also supported Gotabaya.
No party members of us.
So then there is not...
Any party members?
No, my concern is your alliance, I'm saying.
Maybe alliance, why
right.
Alliance?
So the thing is, it's all depend on... See, all the politicians in this country, they have a track record. So Rajapakshas, yes, they in 2005 they said they are going to save the country. 2010 they said they saved the country, and 2015 they failed because they said they will further save the country, and 2019 again the security concern. So everyone in this country had their populist theories. So I don't think that traditional way of populist thinking or kind of a mass segregation has brought something good to the country so far. So now we are not in a comfort zone. Just to understand or argue that these populist theories or this the person who is in grassroots level or who is going to serve the grassroots people, that is a second level story. But what we are looking at right now, President Wickremesinghe, to my understanding, is not only looking at the business or corporates in Colombo. He has to, as a state leader and as a future president, he has to look forward on benefit of the each individual citizen of this country, despite he's a corporate member or just a welfare, social security beneficiary or anything. He has to look after everyone. So, because despite the fact that when we went through the crisis, everyone got affected. So, this is, you can't, draw a line, you are protected, you are unprotected. We can't say that.
But Bharat, on what Kusum was speaking about poverty in Sri Lanka increasing exponentially and the measures that have been introduced to bring Sri Lanka's economy now. You say that Ranil Wickremesinghe has stabilized the economy, but it was at the expense of the general public. It was
Exactly.
the people who paid the actual price.
No.
So on my question, coming to my question, Bharat, now what Kusum said has some credence in this fact that poverty has increased in Sri Lanka. And as you said before, your community, the community that you're representing, the estate workers, are among the poorest of the poor because they have been disenfranchised for so long, because their concerns have not been met, their rights have not been assured to them, and they are amongst the poorest of the poor. So all of these measures have undoubtedly made them poorer. So do you conflict, or do you oppose Kusum on what he said?
No,
Poverty has increased, and if that is the case, if what Kusum says is really true, and there are facts and figures to support that, you said that you were in consultation with your community when you decided to support Ranil Wickremesinghe, and has your community been misinformed on how far they have fallen when they made their views known to you?
No, the thing is, I really wanted to explain on that point. The thing is, it is not about, President Wickremesinghe eradicating the queues or, making things available in the market. I'm not talking about only on that. I'm just talking about many things on how we are going to take this country forward. As you correctly pointed out, in the World Bank report, we are the vulnerable community. I'm just saying. So when it comes to World Health Organization report, yes, the poverty level and food inflation is affecting the plantation community directly. So are we going to take this forward for another decade or not is our question. And also we are going to look at the big picture of the national economy. So if the country's economy is stable, I'm 100% sure the economy of our community will also come into a good condition. But unfortunately, when it comes to on the cost now, I don't see, I'm not a big expert on economy, but to my understanding, at the moment, the country can make revenue on two things. One is the tax revenue, which the country is earning, somewhat in the foreign remittance which is going to earn, and about the bringing in investments and also sending exports to the other countries. So, are the others, does have a plan for that is a question everyone should understand. Because unlike the presidential elections previously, this election, even a layman is very much concerned about the country's financial policies and economic situation. As my friend correctly pointed out, everyone should understand the economic policies, even from a grassroots level to a top level corporate person.
So but when you look at that, when you look at the let's say the policies that each of the candidates have put forward, you
Nadeem, just before you pose the question, Nadeem, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Nadisha De Silva representing the August Collective, who has just joined us on the show. Thank you very much, Nadisha, for taking time off your busy schedule and joining us. Nadeem, you may continue.
So but when you look at this, you mentioned President Wickremesinghe's Theravada trading economy that he talks about. When you compare that with, say, the SJB's blueprint or the NPP's, I forget the name, or the NPP's manifesto, when you see the positions that they have put forward, do you feel that it is Mr. Wickremesinghe's manifesto that has the positions that are most favorable to your community?
Obviously, and also, see, on commenting on NPP's thing, see, we really, I don't want to, point fingers at this thing, but on practicality, and now most of the populist theories of NPPs is putting forward without a plan for a solid income for the revenue for the country and proper working plan for the country. You can't just decide, okay, we'll give a chance and see. We are not in a comfort zone to decide to give a chance and see. That is what even Kusum or whoever supports on the capitalist movement are very much focused on the market-based economy, where, there are two kind of economies. One, state-owned economy and market-based economy. So, on this context, Sri Lanka is much need of market-based economies, where the investors and the local manufacturers should have a confidence of Sri Lanka's economy.
Yeah.
So, but as on your question, I really agree. President Wickremesinghe's plan and what he has delivered how he has convinced the international stakeholders, and how he is working with the creditors and international monetary organization is much favorable for the country's economic growth.
Kusum, before I go to, I have a couple of questions for you as well, Dr. Kumaragurupan, but based on what Bharat said about the president's plan versus your plan, let's say you can't speak for the NPP's plan, but for your plan, do you agree?
Yeah, can I just quickly check? Mr. Bharat was a member of the CWC for some time.
I'm
were you
still a member of the military.
So, as a member of the CWC, were you supportive of your party's position in supporting Gotabaya Rajapaksa in 2019?
Yeah, we openly supported him, and we were the
Right.
backpost.
So, before you supported him, did you read his manifesto? Did you support his
We
manifesto?
all read manifestos and support.
So, when you read his manifesto, did you notice that he had suggested the tax cuts for Sri Lanka's
Exactly.
economy? And you thought that the tax cuts were a good idea despite the IMF since 2014 telling Sri Lanka to go through a revenue-based fiscal
Okay,
consolidation?
say I'll shoot out the same question to you. Your party leader is also mentioning about tax cuts. So are you agreeing
Nope.
on that?
That's actually categorically untrue because the
So how are you?
SJB
How
is
are you?
actually
How are
the,
you? Now, just a question for my understanding.
I was just
no,
continuing.
I'm just
Yeah, okay.
I'm my
Sure.
understanding.
No, because I want to just stick to the question that Nadeem asked because
No, I'm
you
just-
asked me a question.
because you
since
shoot out
you
the-
read the manifesto of Gotabaya
No, I
Rajapaksa, and
totally-
Gotabaya Rajapaksa's manifesto is what crashed the country, how do you expect the public and the people at home to take your word for it that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe's manifesto is what the country needs when you were so completely wrong with the Gotabaya Rajapaksa manifesto?
Mr. Kusum, let me explain. Right.
But you accept you were wrong about the
No.
Gotabaya
We are not
manifesto.
accepting.
So you think
that.
Gotabaya Rajapaksa
just
manifesto was
let
correct?
Let me speak.
No, I'm just trying to get an answer.
Yeah,
for this.
no, that's what I need to explain. Give my answer, no? So, Mr. Kusum, when we supported President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, as the majority of the country, we thought, yes, he has a proper plan to increase the revenue of the country.
No, he didn't have a proper plan to reduce this.
Let me finish, no?
Happened to the country.
I think it's only right.
Right?
Sorry, my mistake.
So we, according to others, we according to our party decisions, we had a very much understanding. Okay, yes, President may have a proper plan for increasing the state revenue, and also yes, as you correctly mentioned, by a lot of corporates, many people decided, okay, there is a tax cut. As a result, there will be a benefit for the country, but we all experienced, yes, that was a blunder made by President, and also we were part of that. Now, we are very much carefully looking at the tax policies, unlike other previous years. Okay, there should be a proper tax policy for the country, and also we are not independent to take a decision to reduce the tax as a political benefits. We are in a position where to convince the other stakeholders also into the game. So that is what President Wickremesinghe created a few important policies and laws, especially on the central bank, and also this economic policies, how we are going to go forward. So these are the correct tracks. As a result, yes, we corrected ourselves and we supported President Ranil Wickremesinghe. So that doesn't constitute whatever the SJB is saying correct. That we don't agree. Yes, President Wickremesinghe has a correct plan, has a correct vision, with the proper monetary plan and proper tax management, and also in liaise with the IMF.
So, when you look at the SJB's blueprint, right, let me mention like some specific things. Having read the manifestos of all of the major players, let's say, you look, there is some clarity when it comes to taxation policy, right, regarding, for example, lowering the minimum to 1%, keeping the tax threshold the same but lowering to 1%, and then going up to 36% at a certain thing. And when you look at even the other policies, an interesting fact to note is that it's one of the few that actually has time frames for implementation, right? The NPP's manifesto notably does not have a time frame for implementation. There are some similarities there in policy as well, especially around things like the Independent Public Prosecutor's Office and all that, but there is time frame for implementation as well. In that sense, do you feel that the SJB has a more practical and pragmatic policy document than the other parties do?
See, Yet again, I'm just harping on my view. See, it is not only the document or the manifesto is going to decide the country, but going to take forward. As my friend pointed out, yes, that the manifesto of former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had a lot of good things, but what was delivered is the worst of worst.
Yeah.
But like so.
But let me ask. Let me just to move on. Let me ask just one question and move on. If it turns out that either Mr. Sajid Premadasa or Mr. Anurukumara Dissanayake win the election, if the candidate you're backing loses, will the CWC work with the new administration to take the country forward?
No, we are very much confident that Ranil Wickremesinghe.
So on that note, I'd like to quickly pick.
But Nadeem, just before that, if we could maybe move to Nadish.
Can I start with a question from Nadisha?
Well, definitely.
Yeah, sure. Nadisha, the August Collective, can you tell me now the position that your group, which is relatively new if I'm not mistaken, the position that you all are taking this presidential election, are you all backing a candidate? Are you all discouraging people from backing any of the major candidates? What's the position?
Number one, to your question. See, right now, actually we are seeing two major candidates when it's up to the power politics.
Who are these two candidates?
Anurukumara Dissanayake in one side and Ranil Wickremesinghe.
And Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you don't...
Premadasa is not a major candidate.
See, when it's up to ideologists, we have to talk about ideologies, right? There are only two candidates who are working on ideologies. I can't see any ideology behind Sajid Premadasa. Now we know since some time.
I mean, when you say you can't see any ideology behind Sajid Premadasa, what do you mean?
No, I'll tell you one
thing. I don't understand.
See, then we'll talk about two other candidates first. Okay. So I'm telling now we are seeing.
But I'm interested in more why you think Sajid Premadasa is not a major candidate.
No. Major candidate means he's a major candidate.
He's a major candidate.
He's a major candidate. Okay. It doesn't mean like he might win as well. That's a different story. Okay. Now we have three candidates who are almost capable of winning this thing. It's still in open grounds. It can be Anuru, it can be Ranil, it can be Sajid. Still, it's an open ground.
He's out.
He's out.
According to you.
Yeah, he's out.
Because we unfortunately don't have a representative of the SLPP. Yeah. So.
Now we know that Anurukumara Dissanayake has almost developed a force behind him. That he has marked his fences.
His ideological territory.
See, we know what his ideology is. It's not Malimava, it's not the NPP, it is JVP. There's nothing called Malimava or NPP. It is JVP, which is the ideology behind NPP, what we are talking about.
Okay.
So that they have an ideology which we are not supporting, which we oppose.
Okay.
But still,
what's the ideology that you support as the August Collective?
I'll come to the point. Okay. So that's what I said about Anurukumara Dissanayake. And then we have to find out who's exactly opposing Anurukumara Dissanayake. Whether it is Ranil Wickremesinghe or whether it is Sajid Premadasa. Okay. So, as I told that it is Malimava which was the icing. Malimava is only the icing which is upon JVP. And because that is how they fool people, or that is how they present themselves. That is how they present themselves to get the attraction of the public, which they have already taken. From the other hand, you are having Sajid Premadasa. Now, I don't know what they will say. Now, we have a contrasting ideologies about the economical policies. What Mr. Harsha De Silva is saying, and which Mr. Sajid Premadasa is saying. I don't see a big difference between.
Where is the contrast? What is it specifically that is contrasting?
See, don't you feel that it's a big difference that which Harsha De Silva is proposing, and in the same time, Sajith Premadasa, he's more into a now.
You're saying he's more into handouts, to giving things away.
Yeah, he's giving away, right?
Okay.
He promises. He's a promiser. He gives away. Okay, that's what happens. So that's why I'm telling there's no ideology. But Ranil Wickremesinghe is the person who's actually the opposite of Anura Kumara right now.
So I mean, if I'm to just cut to the chase,
and you asked, I didn't answer your question.
Who are you backing?
I'm backing. See, right now, I'm not telling that Ranil Wickremesinghe is the most appropriate president for the next 5 years. But I'll say that we believe, at least for next 2 years, this IMF program should continue according to how Ranil.
But all the candidates that you're talking about have pledged to continue the IMF program, including
exactly.
Anura Kumara and Sajith Premadasa.
No, they are having their ideas on negotiating the DSA. Okay, so
there's the NPP.
That's NPP in one way, and also SJB as well, up to some content.
SJB has very firmly taken the position that the DSA cannot be renegotiated. That it's not something you renegotiate because it's a IMF staff document. That's their very firm position.
Okay, but Ranil Wickremesinghe's program, which is continuing right now. Now we actually about Ranil Wickremesinghe, we don't need to look at the manifesto. Right? This is what he's almost doing for like two years. Okay, so what we believe is that he should continue for at least for 2 years.
So you're not expressing much confidence in Ranil Wickremesinghe after 2 years?
I'm not telling I'm not confident after 2 years.
Because this is a 5-year presidency.
See, I'm just saying that I am backing Ranil Wickremesinghe for 2 years to continue this thing until we start paying the interest in 2028.
Nadisha, when you say I'm saying, do you mean you personally or the August Collective?
See, August Collective believes in such thing, and also I personally believe the same thing.
So, you know, based on what I mean, the discussion that has transpired so far, Dr. Kumaragurupuram believes that the policy document is nothing. You should,
all policy documents.
Just don't read it. We wasted our time reading all of these.
Actually nothing, and there's another thing. See, in Sri Lanka, according to us, according to what we believe, now what we are seeing is this governance crisis and the economic crisis. Now, Niresh asked a good question that don't try, I mean, whether I'm not sure about Ranil Wickremesinghe after 2 years. See, Sri Lanka is in a leadership crisis more than any other. We are in a leadership crisis. Now see, look at these three...
are you by any chance expecting Mr. Wickremesinghe to win and then be chased out in 2 years like the last president?
No, I didn't tell any of that.
Okay, just to clarify that. Because it is a 5-year term.
It's a 5-year term, but what I meant was at least for another 2 more years, this, what Ranil Wickremesinghe is doing currently has to be continued. So we have to give that chance.
So, I mean
so Dr. Kumaragurupan, I'll come to you now because I want to ask you this question as well, right? Because we were talking earlier about the role that the votes of the minority communities are going to play in this election, which in 2015 was carried very comfortably by Maithripala Sirisena, and even despite losing in 2019, Mr. Sajith Premadasa got the bulk of those votes. You're kind of the example of what I put to Kusum when I said that the parties that are canvassing for this time around are a lot less united than they were in 2019, because you yourself are sitting on the fence on this issue, being a prominent leader of the DPC, the Democratic People's Congress, and the Democratic National Front before that, right, if I'm not mistaken. If you have taken this position, does that mean that even in the SLMC we've seen Mr. Ali Zahid Maulana is backing Ranil Wickremesinghe while Mr. Rauf Hakim is backing Sajith Premadasa? Does this mean that Mr. Premadasa is suffering a crisis of confidence amongst these parties?
No.
But you're not backing him?
No, I don't say I don't back.
But you said that you're going to be voting
on principle, we have to. If we look at the history back, how we have been saved, and there is a balance, at least as he said, another 2 years the president needed, his services are needed to finish off this issue. So,
but why do you think that Mr. Premadasa or Mr. Anukumar Dissanayake or any of the other candidates, why do you think that Ranil Wickremesinghe is the only person that can fulfill this? Because others also tend to stick with it.
Even if Sajith Premadasa is coming up for winning, he has to continue the same Ranil Wickremesinghe's same path of economic.
So I'll raise some of the questions. I'll raise some of the points that like Kusum mentioned, which is that look, if you look at even in following the IMF policy, and this is true because the IMF did set a social spending limit, which Mr. Wickremesinghe's administration has not they've not met that social spending cap, right? They've actually been way under it. When you look at it from that lens, don't you think that there is even in following the IMF program through, that there needs to be a change to a party with the people's mandate in order to follow it through?
Yeah, of course, that is the issue. Actually, as we see in politics, people's mandate, that has become supreme. Say, if you take for example, Gotabaya winning, and finally what has happened, that is where I see democracy also fails at times.
So you don't have much faith that the voters will choose the correct...
So what you're saying, Dr. Kumar, it's not about faith in Ranil Wickremesinghe or Sajith Premadasa. You don't have faith in the Sri Lankan voter.
No. On principle, you just look at. They were asking about whether CWC have supported the quota-based policy or not. Whatever the question may be. Ultimately, the people's mandate was given to him. He came out with the people's mandate. So which has been a bad choice ultimately. So psychologically, as we think, I don't believe the democracy is always correct.
Let me get to Kusum.
But ultimately, the democracy is the supreme.
Kusum, you mentioned something about the number of people who are now below the poverty line, which you also said was a direct result of the policies of the current administration. Do you believe that these policies, which have driven so many millions below the poverty line, do you believe that has resulted in voters being driven so far left to the NPP to the detriment of your party?
Let me just clarify. It's not that the president's policies have created the poverty. The poverty was an inevitable circumstance of the economic collapse. But the idea is of government in place is to protect the most vulnerable and the poorest. That's what the IMF told us. So forget about what Kusum is saying. The IMF told us, protect the poor, because that's what the IMF has seen for over half a century of doing this in various countries, right? They've seen that the poorest people suffer the most. And this is not that the IMF is some kind of altruistic organization. They understand that if the poorest people are struggling, that creates political instability, which in turn risks their own program.
This was personified in what transpired in Greece.
In Greece, exactly the same thing. So Greece, in fact, the IMF in Greece came out and apologized for their own policies. They said that we underestimated the growth, we underestimated the amount of people in poverty, etc. Now, when you talk about the plan that Mr. Wickremesinghe has presented, the Theravada trading economy, right? So there was an article by Professor W. Vijayavardhan, so independent economist, nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the SJB.
Former deputy governor of the central bank.
Former central banker, former deputy governor of the central bank. He rubbished the Theravada trading economy. He said it's just it's a branding exercise, right? So this whole project of Mr. Wickremesinghe's presidency has been a branding exercise. It's about rebranding him as some sort of national leader who has the country's best interests at heart, who is the only man with a plan. And we've been asked to forget about his long history of economic management and failure. Now, in 2015 alone, he tried this exact same game of doing a revenue-based fiscal consolidation. They passed the Inland Revenue Act in 2018. Sri Lanka's tax to GDP barely went over 12%. I don't think it even reached 12%. So this is Mr. Wickremesinghe's most recent record. And we mentioned the last 2 years as well, right? So in terms of his... he recently said it was his own words. He said, in my opinion, governance is second, right? Now, if the president of Sri Lanka, whose government wrote to the IMF and requested that the IMF generate a governance diagnostic report, is now saying that governance is second. When every economist and every analyst has understood that governance and economics go together in Sri Lanka, that's where we failed. We failed because there were people in positions that had no business being in those positions, right? That had been the case during Yahapalne. During Yahapalne, when the Easter attack happened, who was the national security advisor? Was he someone with national security experience? No. Mr. Wickremesinghe, before, as soon as he came into power, he gazetted the central bank under the Prime Minister's office. Personally invited Arjuna Mahendran from Singapore and told him to take that position. Then advised him to leave the country when the proverbial excrement hit the fan. Now we are asking that same president to set institutions in order to run this country for the next 2 years or for the next 5 years. I mean, can you take these people seriously when they say this? Mr. Wickremesinghe has a record of failure. It's unequivocal. I mean, you can point to one or two policies and say, oh, look at what he passed, look at this legislation, look at the constitutional councils. Look at where the constitutional councils are now. What is Mr. Wickremesinghe saying about the power of the executive within our system? What happened to his principles of devolution of power, of decentralizing power, of abolishing the executive presidency? What happened to all that? It's all changed because now he's got a different parliament behind him, right? So I think some of my colleagues have placed their trust in a politician who has completely changed his principles.
Kusum, that baggage that you're talking about, whether it's with the bond scam, the Easter attacks, all of that, do you feel that now, we discussed this earlier as well, but do you agree then that this surge that the NPP is experiencing, let's say, in popularity, is driven again by this anti-establishment, and the SJB is also suffering from that because the SJB does carry some of that baggage too, because many of the SJB's members were part of that Yahapalne. They see many of the people who were in that, even not SJB members themselves, but even in the Samagi Jana Sandhanaya, if you take even people like Minister Partli Champi Ranaka, who has pledged support recently, if you take across the board from the SNMC, ACMC to all these people were part of that administration. Many of them were in cabinet positions during that administration, and that by doctrine of collective responsibility, you all have also been tainted by that same brush that you are now painting Mr. Wickremesinghe with. And that is why the NPP is...
I think this came up in your session with the members of parliament, Honourable Eran Wickremaratne and Harshidi Silva, a few days ago, right? I was a voter in 2015, and part of the reason for my support for the UNP at the time was people like Dr. Harshidi Silva and Mr. Eran Wickremaratne who came in to the UNP as fresh faces. People that we expected them to get important central portfolios in government. Instead, they were sidelined. And you can go and look at the cabinet that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe appointed in 2015 and see if those people had the necessary capabilities you know. But
so on that point, Kusum, let me ask you, the question that people who will be voting
yes,
now, like you were in 2015,
correct.
The question that they are going to be asking is, it's not Dr. Harshidi Silva or Mr. Eran Wickremaratne that's on the ballot, it's Mr. Sajith Premadasa.
Yeah.
They may be on his team, but he's the leader.
Yes.
What has he done to deserve my vote?
Well, what is he
offering? Well, more than what is he offering?
Nadeem, if I just may rephrase, what would prevent you from coming down on Face the Nation 10 years down the line and saying the same thing about Sajith Premadasa that you are now saying about Ranil Wickremesinghe?
For the simple fact that if you look at the Economic Council and the way the Economic Council, for instance, has been given a certain amount of independence to draft policy, that says it all. And the fact of the members of the...
So that wasn't available under Ranil Wickremesinghe.
But when you look at
I don't think you can be serious about that, right? I mean, Mr. Eran Wickremaratne and Dr. Harshidi Silva and Mr. Kabir Hashim have integrity. They've maintained a certain level of integrity. Now, people can throw stones at whatever in the past, but I think compared to the median politician in Sri Lanka, these three members have maintained a certain amount of integrity. And the fact that those members with integrity have refused, despite constant badgering and invitations and incentives provided by Ranil Wickremesinghe, these three members who until recently, each one of those members was receiving personal phone calls from President Wickremesinghe to come and join him with incentives. So despite that, they decided to stick with Mr. Sajith Premadasa because they understand that they have something in common, and that is the national mandate and some level of public trust. So that's something that you can't buy at the moment.
Kusum, you also mentioned, just very quickly, you also mentioned, that the party may have been too inclusive for your liking. And you said about governance as well, about how, one of the primary problems with governance in the country is that people who had no business being in positions of power were in positions of power. When you look at the fact that, when you say that this is one of the major reasons that people should not vote for Ranil Wickremesinghe, and then you yourself said, look, Mr. Premadasa has maybe been too inclusive with who he's invited into the party. Isn't that, maybe even if it's not to the same extent, the same kind of politics that people have rejected through the Aragalia, and that they may be very disappointed that Mr. Sajith Premadasa is also participating in that kind of politics?
Yes, I mean, look, before I even joined the SJB, there were many members of the SJB, as it stood, that I was not in agreement with. But this is a Big Ten political party. And I think if, let's say, one of the members of the SNS, the Samvijan SJS, the Sandhanaya, becomes a state minister or a cabinet minister, have me on this program and ask me how I feel about it, and I'll tell you how I feel about it. I'll tell you right now how I feel about some of those members. That's no problem. The SJB is a very independent party. We are generally quite independent people in the party. We're not people who are going to go and bow our heads and forget about everything that we said in the last 10 years because the leader says so. Okay, that's for other parties to do. People in the SJB are independent-minded. We have disagreements, we have agreements, but generally speaking, we are liberals, and we want to see the party, we want to see the country do better, and we just don't have any trust in Mr. Wickremesinghe's abilities to govern this country. It's just very simple.
Thank you very much, Kusum. On that note, we'll have to cross over to a short commercial break before Nadeem pops in another question, but we will have time for more questions after this short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Face the Nation.
Companies play better politics than the politicians of today.
We are not supposed to play with the people's expectation. Then it will be a huge disaster.
When you're bankrupt and when you're going to bankruptcy, two different.
The grandfather is saying it is going to take this long. What does he know?
It's about the lack of sense of humor in Sri Lankans.
Issues that matter the most. Unfiltered discussions. Real answers. Face to face. Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on TV1.
ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂක අනුර කුමාර දිසානායක සමග සටන නැවත විකාශය අදදා සවස් 3ට TV1 ඔස්සේ.
The voice of the nation determines its future through every choice, with every vote.
Newsfirst.
Bringing you the latest updates, first and fast, with the truth at its core and real-time data.
Catch every detail with expert analysis, answer to your questions and the unexpected uncovered.
Stay ahead of the curve with the latest technology, one update at a time throughout the day.
Feel the pulse of the election.
On your screens.
Stay connected and informed.
With Newsfirst.
Sri Lanka decides.
Sri Lanka decides.
Welcome back. You're watching Face the Nation. We're in the final stage of today's program. We've had a very productive discussion at the cusp of a very, very important election, an election where you, the general public, will have to select the next leader of Sri Lanka. And it's your responsibility to make an informed choice on who you vote for, and it's our duty to provide you with the information that you require to make that informed choice. So, coming to our closing statements on Face the Nation today and the final round of today's program, I'd like to pose this question to Bharat Arulswamy, representative of the CWC. Now, Bharat, your arguments that you made during the program, in a nutshell, to me it appeared to be saying Ranil Wickremesinghe is the leader we trust to implement the IMF program and bring economic stability to Sri Lanka, which is the #1 priority right now for all Sri Lankans. So on that point, when we speak about implementing the IMF program is already in place. Certain parameters have been set. And I'm reading from a document or report put out by publicfinance.lk. And this is what the report says. The prognosis of failing on governance comes from examining the 16 commitments that were not met by Ranil Wickremesinghe, published 6th of June, just 2 months ago. 7 of them were on financial management. These are the ones that were not met. 6 on financial transparency and 3 on anti-corruption measures. And the highlight of the report being, Sri Lanka is failing to comply with the IMF program precisely on the aspects that were diagnosed by the IMF as the root cause for the economic crisis, which are problems of financial transparency, management and corruption. So with this being the reported fact, how have you convinced yourself that Ranil Wickremesinghe is the right man to implement the IMF program when, as you said before, he was instrumental in putting together this IMF program when all the other political parties were saying, go for an election, he said, no, I'm going to set this straight. And he put in an IMF program with a government that did not have the mandate of the people. And like it or not, the IMF program is in place right now. But this very IMF program that he himself discussed with the IMF and put in place, he has failed to meet, not only him and his government has failed to meet 16 commitments. And according to this report, those are the very reasons or the root causes that were identified by the IMF for the economic crisis. So in this light, Bharat, please tell me, how did you convince yourself and how are you convincing the general public that Ranil Wickremesinghe is the right person to implement this IMF program?
Well, yet again, I'm emphasizing on the fact that, see, unlike other elections or decisions we have made thus far, this is very much different, in which we are just, as you correctly mentioned, yes, IMF program is on place, and also you have, pointed out a statement made by the IMF, and also I am referring to a statement made by the IMF, where they have clearly said they have to stick with the 12th June 2024 the external fund facility program, and also it should not be deviated, and also reform efforts, bearing fruits right now. So if I may, reform efforts are bearing fruit. Economic growth is starting to, revive. Inflation is coming down. International reserves are increasing, and revenue mobilization is improving. Nonetheless, important vulnerabilities to do remain, and sustaining reform is going to be essential. Yeah. So, when there is that is the very reason President Ranil Wickremesinghe is asking a mandate from the entire citizen of this country. Yes, we do now, despite the fact that the anti-corruption bill, and also the economic transformation bill. So these are some very valuable legislations which going to be stabilized according to the IMF programs. And also, my good friend pointed out, yes, now whether with the tax reduction, haven't you all discussed this in when we are supporting Gotabaya Rajapaksa?
Yes.
Now I just went through the SJB manifesto. They say the personal income tax after tax, per month for 1% and increase to 24%, and around they are going to increase the reduce the personal income tax, and corporate income tax they are going to reduce it, and value added tax from we intend to reduce VAT 15% once the tax company improves. So with this tax now, what I'm saying is we are also not in favor of burdening the people. We all understand, increasing tax is a problematic for everyone. But the thing is, unless we stabilize the country, we have to go through some hardship. This hardship, now as we, now he constantly point fingers at Ranil Wickremesinghe is incapable. Even that 2029 to 15, 2000, I am also voter only, right? That doesn't mean that I am also part of that. But, their leader was part of that cabinet. So he is collectively accountable for that, any miserable, if the government or the Prime Minister had done or the President has done. So now if they are pointing fingers at the present cabinet and the ministers, then they should also collectively take the responsibility for that mishaps which happened during that course of 2015 to 2019. I'm not going to do the blame game here. I'm very much confident that President Wickremesinghe is the only candidate who has this game plan to correctly execute and implement with the proper mandate of the people. And also the opposition, including the NPP, SJB, they had the opportunity to come forward and take it and do it and show it to the country. But they gave some childish excuses that they can't come without a proper mandate, or the country is in a very the so-called economic salvats. They said it's in a mess. We can't come and take over and do. And we are not depending on one individual or group of individual for this economic recovery. We are depending on the people's mandate and on the proper leadership. So we strongly believe that Ranil Wickremesinghe has the leadership quality to take forward this with the even the people who had no knowledge of handling things. With the support of everyone, with the proper management, yes, we have successfully taken into a next step. I am saying we have come out of this entire crisis 100%. We are on the progressive side. To make it more progressive and achieve the target which we are focusing on 2048. So this is the high time. This leadership with the strong economical and political and geopolitical understanding should take the leadership. So accordingly, we are supporting Ranil Wickremesinghe. So as I correctly mentioned, Ranil Wickremesinghe, yes, there are some ups and downs in management, but he has delivered. Other countries are commenting and commending on his action and on the government, on the fast recovery. So those who have given excuses should support Ranil Wickremesinghe to take this forward.
So Bharat, now, again, my question to you is, now you said that Ranil Wickremesinghe has leadership qualities. Yes, that's what you believe in. Yes. That's what you believe. And some people might go with you on that, based on what has happened here in Sri Lanka. Now, you're saying that Sri Lanka has come to a certain level of stability. Taxes were increased exponentially. Then every working person in Sri Lanka took a massive cut on their EPF and ETF, right? It was all of these money that went into stabilizing Sri Lanka. I understand that's a hard decision, and there was a leader who made that decision, and that was Ranil Wickremesinghe. Fine. The IMF has rolled out a program. They've given a program and given certain parameters. And it's up to the leader to stick by those parameters. And the leader who discussed with the IMF and agreed on this program is Ranil Wickremesinghe. So my question to you is, when the parameters of the IMF that have been set by the IMF are not being met by the very same leader who discussed it with the IMF, how have you convinced yourself that Ranil Wickremesinghe is the leader to properly implement this program?
Same thing now, as I told you, there are some ups and downs, there are some gaps.
It's not ups and downs here, it's simply IMF parameters that have not been met. And according to publicfinance.lk, these parameters are the very same parameters that were identified as the IMF as the root cause for the economic crisis. So if in any case at all, this should be number one priority, financial transparency, because financial mismanagement, as you quite rightly said, was the root. Arbitrary tax cuts that were given, massive tax cuts. So, for example, now the IMF has recommended to stop changing or imposing and withdrawing certain taxes arbitrarily. And recently, Nadeem, I'm not too sure, but the cess tax was cut down on certain goods, and this practice continues to carry on, where political stooges can gain massive profits, like the sugar scam, the coconut oil scam, and many other scams. So why hasn't Ranil Wickremesinghe, you have much confidence in him, and I admire you for that. That's your belief. So, but why hasn't Ranil Wickremesinghe been able to put one of these things straight? If it's on tax, the taxing system is not, it's not certain yet. It's not certain. And certainty in tax is an important aspect of taxation, and clarity in tax. Then financial transparency. We don't know what companies are getting financial benefits, what companies are getting tax exemptions. IMF had proposed that this be put up on online, and that's not there. Then when it comes to, say, something very simple like the energy pricing formula, Mangala Samaravira, who was in the UNP at the time, introduced a formula, and it was members of the SLPP and other political parties who revoked that formula. There was a formula back then. Today, I don't know what the formula is on pricing of energy, right? It doesn't fluctuate with the world market. It is as arbitrary as it was. The only difference here is that back then, the CEB was making massive losses. Now they are making massive profits at the expense of the people, both not favorable to the general public. So my question to you again once, if you can answer me, in short, Bharat, is tell me one thing that Ranil Wickremesinghe has put straight during this time period. One thing that the IMF has maybe even proposed, preferably something that the IMF has proposed. One thing that has been put straight.
One thing is the major thing is the root cause. The root cause is one of the major cause is the corruption, and on also the transparency of the,
So he's addressed corruption.
Yeah, I'm not saying he has eradicated the corruption yet, but for that we need to have a proper laws
Okay.
and policy framework.
Oh, he has brought them.
So it has come in. So I think that is a good starter for the country to go forward with the IMF recommendations.
But Bharat, what use are laws passed in Parliament if they are not applied?
No, the implementation process should be properly, incorporated, Mr. Naresh. So what I feel is that, President is asking for the mandate from the people. Yes, there are some lagging areas wherein which I have provided solution. To take this forward, I need more support from you all to take it forward. So that is what he is pitching for the people. Yes, there is a recommendation given by the IMF. These are the things I have done so far, and these are the things I'm going to do it. So, do I have the permission to do it or not?
Let me follow up with Nadisha. President Wickremesinghe, for the last 2+ years, as he has been president, he has been hamstrung by the lack of his own party having any kind of presence in Parliament. He has simply one member out of 225. So, should he win again, what would be different in Parliament? Yes, we might have a general election soon, but do you expect that his party, the UNP, would get a majority or even 50 seats?
See, now,
because once again, he would, you want him for 2 years or 5 years or whatever, he would still have both hands tied behind his back.
First, I'll tell you one thing. Don't misunderstand the word I said about that 2-year thing. What I said that at least for 2 years, this program should be continued as it came up to this point. That's all what I meant in that case. Okay, and then the answer is there inside your question. You said if Ranil Wickremesinghe wins this time. Okay, so if Ranil now, yes, he has only his seat. He was the only person. He was the only person in the Parliament from UNP. Okay, but if he wins, then that if matters. Then it will become when he wins. Then you can see how the other camp is going to collapse. That's how it works in Sri Lankan politics. Now, if Ranil Wickremesinghe wins the election...
Which other camp are you talking
SJB.
about? Okay.
SJB for sure. See, I'm telling you that I'm not in any campaign for Ranil Wickremesinghe. I just said that I backed Ranil Wickremesinghe for this next few years as the president. That's it. So I'm talking as a person who's in the middle. Just I'm saying, if he wins, then the SJB camp will collapse. Then you will see who are the people who's going to come to Ranil Wickremesinghe's side. That will be a different story. Then in the general election, you will see who's going to get the majority of seats.
So you're expecting that the SJB would collapse, and you're expecting...
I'm not expecting SJB will collapse. I'm just telling, if Ranil Wickremesinghe wins, then SJB will 100% sure it's going to collapse.
Okay.
And majority of the SJB parliamentarians and the people who are going to contest from SJB will be with Ranil Wickremesinghe.
And do you believe that would be sufficient for a majority in parliament?
See, if a person wins the presidency, as we know how it's going to work, so definitely the majority will be there. Most probably there will be a huge chance for the president who is going to become is going to get a majority in the parliament from the next general election. Either it will be Wickremesinghe, Premadasa or Disanayaka.
But Nadisha, now based on what you said, the general public really got onto the streets and protested, demanding for a change in the political system, a change in, skipping political parties, policyless politics in the country. But based on what you said, there is not going to be any change in Sri Lanka if Ranil Wickremesinghe wins.
Yes, true.
Okay.
True.
Okay.
People in the country, they came to the streets and they
asked for change.
They asked for the change. So what is the change that people asked? Do you think that people were aware of the change that they are going to get? No. If they know what is the change that they are going to get, there will be no force behind NPP right now. Do you think that they are behind NPP knowing what kind of a change that they are going to get? No, they were asking for a political culture's change.
Yes.
They wanted a change in the political culture which they didn't know what exactly is.
So they
are saying the people don't know what they want.
That
I'm not telling that.
He's continuing that culture.
Yes. That's why I'm saying that. I was just backing.
So you're saying the people don't know what exactly they want the change to
Honestly speaking, Niresh, there's a huge problem in Sri Lankan public about the political literacy and the awareness. There's no doubt in that.
So do you know what you want?
I know what I want.
You know what you want?
Yes.
But the general public doesn't?
Majority
doesn't?
Majority, they don't know.
Okay.
See, in my point of view, I need a political culture's change. Now, NPP, they have started it in one way. Now people are behind them expecting that. But NPP alone, they will not be capable of doing that because they need a proper opposition, proper person to oppose the other. We need the other of Anura, which is actually not Ranil Wickremesinghe or Sajith Premadasa. That's why I'm telling that there's a leadership crisis in this country. The right wing is empty. There's no right wing at the moment in this country. The right wing has to be emerged from somewhere. Okay? So that's why, as August Collective, what we are suggesting, even if Ranil Wickremesinghe wins, even if Premadasa wins, even if NPP wins, the right wing politics, the ideological right wing has to be there. But I'm 100% sure that Sajith Premadasa is not capable of being the other of Anurukumara Disanayaka. If Anurukumara Disanayaka wins, Sajith Premadasa won't be the proper opposition leader against him. Not him.
And you have very little faith in Namal Rajapaksa being that option.
See, as a person who opposed Rajapaksas from the beginning, since 2004, okay, when we saw that Mahinda Rajapaksa is going to come into the colors, so I can't back any of the Rajapaksas. But we don't know what is going to happen in 2030, 2035.
But you can back people who've been backing Rajapaksa.
What if someone like, let's say, Champika Rano?
Yeah. So
you back him?
So I backed him, and I was in his URF.
Yeah.
I was a central committee member of the United Republic Front. Yeah. So we had our thoughts. We wanted to bring him as the common candidate for the presidency. We did our best, but we were unfortunate, and he was unfortunate. We couldn't get that happen.
But he has made a decision to back Sajid Premadasa.
That's his decision, but then I quit.
Nadi, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nadisha De Silva, representative of the August Collective. We now move our attention to Dr. Kumaragurupuram from the DPC. Dr. Kumaragurupuram, very short in your closing statement, if you could highlight. Now, you said that you don't have much credence for manifestos and these documents, including policy of parties that are being put forward. How much importance do you place on the IMF agreement and the agreement with our creditors that Sri Lanka has entered into, and the promise that the political leaders who are contesting for the election give of sticking with those documents? You think that is important or not? You can also express.
Of course it is important, because looking at the back of our history, in the recent past history, the economic crisis, obviously that is very important, and I am sure that President is all, I think your statement and what you have read and the later report of the IMF are totally different, and he needs some time to recover from that. I don't say that even if the SJB is winning or SJB candidate is winning, they have to follow the same process, same policy what Ranil Wickremesinghe has initiated. So therefore, if the democracy feels, if the democracy sees that there should be a change and it should be SJB, again they are going to follow the same policy and they have to stick on to that. So and ultimately, democracy is the supreme to decide who is going to be the president. So, but as far as NPP is concerned, I have no belief at all, because that will be a totally different change. And as far as this 13th Amendment is also concerned, what he has told in the north, he never sticked on to that when he's speaking in the south.
When you say he, who do you mean?
I mean Anugrah Kumara Dissanayake. Okay. Because he clearly said we need more powers into the 13th Amendment, and ultimately in Colombo recently, 2 days back, he has clearly said, I don't want to bargain on this 13th Amendment as a business and to get the votes from the north. He has very clearly said. So therefore, as far as Tamils are concerned, Northeast Tamils are concerned, I don't think they will be in favor of NPP. But there is a chance for the SJB, there's no doubt about it, because that is the only alternate to Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kumaragurupuram, representing the DPC. We finally move our attention to Kusum Vijayatilaka from the SJB. Much to respond for during the discussions. So, Kusum, you'll be getting a bulk of the time. Kusum, I believe questions were raised as to whether or not Sajid Premadasa has an ideology behind his politics, and also whether Sajid Premadasa would end up having to follow the policies of Ranil Wickremesinghe, given the fact that it was Ranil Wickremesinghe who negotiated the deal with the IMF, and Sajid Premadasa has already given an assurance that he will continue to stick with this program. With answers to those two questions included, the time for your closing statement starts now.
Thanks a lot, and thanks again for having me here. Let me just respond first of all respectfully. Mr. Nadisha said that Mr. Sajid Premadasa has no political ideology, right? He also made the statement that the Sri Lankan centre-right has collapsed. So who has been the standard bearer for Sri Lanka centre-right over the last 20-30 years is Ranil Wickremesinghe. If the centre-right in Sri Lanka has collapsed, it's because Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe's popularity and political character has collapsed. That's the reason there's no centre-right in Sri Lanka right now. And if you talk about someone who doesn't have an ideology, how did Sri Lanka's traditional centre-right politician go and plug himself into Sri Lanka's left-of-centre ultra-nationalist political party in government? Why did he go behind the backs of the entire combined opposition in parliament in 2022 and agree a deal with the president that the entire protest movement was called Gota Go Home. And Mr. Wickremesinghe thought it fit to go and negotiate behind closed doors with Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So all three of my colleagues have now parroted the Rajapaksa narrative that Mr. Sajith Premadasa ran away and that he was scared of taking over. I mean, this is this kind of childish in political scenario that I think most people will, I mean, just look at the letters that were written, exchanged between Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Mr. Sajith Premadasa. Mr. Sumantrian has confirmed this, members of the opposition have confirmed this. The only people that are parroting this narrative of the SJB and Sajith Premadasa not being willing to take over are Rajapaksa supporters and Ranil supporters. So let's be very clear about that. In 2020, it was the SJB when, after the elections, that came up and said, go to the IMF. In 2021, it was the SJB that said, go for a restructuring. In 2022, when we signed the IMF program, the SJB said these revenue targets are going to be extremely difficult to reach if you don't make major investments in the IRD and the customs. So far, we haven't had that. We are doing the same thing we did in 2016. We are increasing VAT and trying to get the maximum amount of revenue from the poorest deciles of the country. It's the exact same thing that happened in 2016. In 2023, we said, the SJB said that the IMF requires public legitimacy. Without public legitimacy, this program is doomed to fail. It's obvious. Not only has we failed to meet the governance targets of the IMF, even the revenue targets, I think we've met the revenue targets in one quarter, and that might be the most recent quarter, and that was it, right? And this is a revenue target which is tax to GDP of 15%, whereas countries of our size, the IPS, the World Bank, generally said we need 20% tax to GDP, right? The whole, I mentioned this before, during 5 years of Ranil Wickremesinghe's premiership, the maximum we got to was 11.7% tax to GDP. That's his record, okay? So we can play this blame game all we like, but at the end of the day, there's only one political manifesto that really pays attention to the trade deficit. Sri Lanka is in this position because of a decades-long balance of payments deficit and a trade deficit, okay? What has been the discourse about Sri Lanka's exports over the last 2 years? In fact, when Mr. Wickremesinghe came into power, one of the first things he did was remove the concessions on exporters, despite Sri Lanka's problem being a lack of foreign exchange from exports. And that's because the whole concentration is on the fiscal balance. That means they can't even focus their attention in two places. If it's the fiscal balance, only the fiscal balance. Forget about all the exporters. So Mr. Wickremesinghe's ideas on exports are limited to economic zones, and that's free trade agreements, okay? No idea of what we're going to trade with these free trade agreements. No protection against dumping. And this is exactly what the commentary, not me, the economic commentary is calling Mr. Wickremesinghe has been a neoliberal his entire career. Now, the entire world is now moving away from neoliberalism. They're moving towards industrialization. That's why the SJB manifesto very clearly focuses on joining global production networks, of incentivizing manufacturing tradable capital, of incentivizing multinationals to come and set up manufacturing organizations here. We will do that by offering incentives in a structured way, not like the Strategic Developments Projects Act that was in place until 2023. Until the middle of 2023, they were doling out 25, 30-year tax breaks to corporations without any transparency. Right now, what is the biggest scandal in the country? The VFS scandal, right? Everything you can ask for. Revenue diverted away from the country. A contract given without transparency, without a tender process. All of this was passed by the cabinet. Who is the head of the cabinet? The president, Ranil Wickremesinghe. What has he commented about this VFS program? Anything that you can tell me? Nothing. What has Mr. Tiranalas commented about this? He keeps saying different things, but nothing related to why we first of all needed this system, what was included in this 200 million investment that they were supposed to make, why did we decide to divert 100% of obvious revenue to the country. Everybody needs a visa to come to Sri Lanka. That revenue is meant to come to Sri Lanka. But we decided, no, let VFS have all of the revenue. So just in this one deal, if you're telling me that Mr. Wickremesinghe has portrayed or showed any sort of governance standards, just in this one deal, I think it should give you plenty of pause for thought, because this shows that nothing has changed in the last 2 years. Nothing in terms of procurement, in terms of project, in terms of governance, okay? But all three of my colleagues here are saying that Mr. Wickremesinghe is the only person who can solve this, despite Mr. Wickremesinghe having tried to do this exact same thing in 2016, as I said. So I'll leave it to the audience at home. There is no time anymore to be low information voters in this election. This election matters for our futures, right? So go and read the manifestos, go and read the speeches, go and take a look at the recent record, the not so recent record, and see who you can place your trust in. And judge people based on their previous record and on their current vision and on their ideas. And whatever else happens, whoever you support, go out there and vote. I think we broke the record for voter turnout in 2020, 2019. We had over 80%. Let's see if we can get that to even higher, and I think that will really show that Sri Lankans are engaged in this political process.
And also to add to that, Kusum, of course, to decrease the number of invalid votes, because I'm pretty sure there might be many other voters who might want to have a second preference or a third preference this time around. And stay tuned to Newsfirst. We will give you details on how that can exactly be done as the election draws closer. Thank you very much once again, Kusum Vijayathilaka from the SJB, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Bharat Arul Swami, for joining us on our program. Dr. Kumara Burupurum from the DPC. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us on our program. And Nadisha De Silva from the August Collective. Thank you very much for joining us on our program. And also thank you very much to Nadim Majid and Niresh Aliyathambi for asking all the right questions. Thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in to another episode of Face the Nation. We will continue our programs in the days to come. Stay tuned to Newsfirst. It's a very, very important election that we are headed into, and these final few days are critical, crucial. Stay with Newsfirst as we keep you abreast of all the information that will assist you, aid you, and help you to make an informed decision at this election. Stay safe, stay connected to Newsfirst. We'll see you again soon.